Given Chrystul Kizer's case that's going to be coming up probably this summer, and the Kyle Rittenhouse case that just concluded, I have some questions that might raise some possibilities for some massive hypocrisy coming out of those who support Chrystul Kizer. And actually, it's not even a possibility, it's a certainty. Hello out there. I am trying to get through.
With his powerful brainwaves cradled in the warmth of reasoning, it's time for Johnny Walker Dread to straighten you out on a thing or two. Emanating all the way from exciting Las Vegas, Oklahoma, it's the Johnny Walker Dread Show.
Will Chrystul supporters say that Volar should be called a victim, but not a rapist or child molester? Go back. With Kyle Rittenhouse, what angered people so much? It was that you couldn't call Joseph Rosenbaum a victim. This is so unfair. He's clearly a victim. And people say, well, why do you call him a victim? Well, he was shot, wasn't he? He was shot to death. He must be a victim. Well, what about Randal Volar? Is he a victim? Oh, no, he's a predator. He's a child rapist. Oh, I mean like Joseph Rosenbaum. Yeah, it's going to be really interesting. And by the way, the same thing applies to the whole rapist or child molester label. Remember, they got all pissed off at Judge Bruce Schroeder because he said that Joseph Rosenbaum and the others could be called looters and rapists and stuff. And they're saying, how could he do something like that? How could they be labeled like this? Are they going to then complain if Randal Volar is labeled a child molester, a rapist? And you know the answer to that. No, they're going to change their argument 180 degrees. It's called hypocrisy. All right, how about this one? Will Chrystul supporters say that Chrystul is guilty because she carried an illegal gun? Oh, remember, Kyle is guilty because he carried that AR-15 illegally. He was 17. He needs to be 18. If you're breaking a law, you can't claim self-defense. But here comes Chrystul Kizer, 17 years old, carrying a handgun in her purse or bag or whatever she was carrying it. Concealed carry. She doesn't have a concealed carry license. And the possession of a handgun by a minor is a felony. So there's no doubt about it. She's breaking the law and breaking a fairly serious one. So do we call her guilty of murder on account of that? And the answer is no. She should be charged for that crime, but that crime has nothing to do with the murder charge. And I've been consistent with that with Chrystul and Kyle. But the anti-Kyles, those who are going to be supporting Chrystul Kizer, are hypocritical on this stance. They're claiming that Kyle has to be found guilty because he was carrying a weapon illegally, but they're not going to apply the same argument to Chrystul. Bank on it. Will Chrystul supporters say that she didn't belong in his house? Remember, Kyle is guilty because he didn't belong there. What's he doing out there on the streets of Kenosha? By the way, public property. What's he doing out there? He should know that he doesn't belong there. Well, let's turn around and ask ourselves that about Chrystul. Did she belong in Randal Volar's house with a gun? I'm sure that if Randal felt that she was going to shoot him, he probably would have said, no, you can't come into my house. The only reason why she got into the house was because he didn't know what she was going to do to him. So did she belong there? And by the way, that is actually going to be used against her quite a bit in the upcoming trial. So those of you who claim that Kyle deserves to be found guilty because he didn't belong there, Michael Gravely is going to use the same argument against Chrystul Kizer. Will Chrystul's supporters say that she should have called 911 after shooting him? Wait a minute. I remember that she shot him, but she didn't call 911. Now remember, that was the big deal against Kyle Rittenhouse. He shot Joe Rosenbaum, but he called his friend Dominic instead of calling 911. Therefore, he has to be guilty. But who did Chrystul Kizer call? She didn't call anybody. She took off in Randal Volar's car and then went on Facebook and started posting about the event. She didn't call 911. And later she will state that she didn't know whether Randal Volar was alive or dead when she set fire to the house. So why didn't she call 911? And yes, that's going to be used against her. Will Chrystul supporters say that she should have turned herself into the police after the shooting? You can't flee the scene of a crime. Yes, you can. It's a Fifth Amendment right. You don't have to turn yourself into the police after you commit a crime. You can flee the scene. Now, you can't necessarily flee the state to get away from being arrested. However, there is no compulsion for a person to have to stay at the scene of a crime and wait for the police to arrive. She clearly fled. Will her supporters say that that makes her guilty? They said that about Kyle. He took off after shooting Joseph Rosenbaum. So therefore, he must be guilty. Are they going to say that about Chrystul? Will Chrystul supporters say that her being armed and going to his house meant she set out to do him harm? Remember, Kyle has a rifle and he's going to a protest. Well, the fact that he's armed and going to a place of potential conflict means he must have set out to do harm. He must have went out there to kill people. Well, are we going to apply the same reasoning to Chrystul Kizer? And by the way, the prosecution probably will. But you know that Chrystul supporters are going to vehemently deny that she should be found guilty on account of that. But they're not willing to extend the same argument to Kyle Rittenhouse. Will Chrystul supporters say that she shot an unarmed man? Randal Volar was found in his chair unarmed. So wait a minute. Even Binger said that you can't shoot an unarmed man. Well, that's not true. But I have a feeling that that argument is going to be dropped completely by the same people who offered it to try to convict Kyle Rittenhouse here. Will Chrystul supporters say that she has shown no remorse? In fact, quite the opposite. She went on Facebook after the event and basically crowed about it and claimed that she would do it again, but there was not an ounce of remorse in it. I thought that the lack of remorse meant that the person should be found guilty, though. Kyle went to Pudgy's. He's drinking. He's having a good time. She went on Facebook, bragged about it for the most part. How are the two situations different? But keep in mind, Kyle went to Pudgy's months later. She did it within days. But you're going to find out that Chrystul supporters will downplay that completely. Will Chrystul supporters say that she admitted shooting a man to death? One of the common arguments I catch is, you know that Kyle should be found guilty. He admitted to shooting these people. The whole notion of self-defense goes out the window with them. The very fact that he shot them means he must be guilty. Are they going to say the same thing about Chrystul Kizer? There's no denying that she shot a man to death. She's a killer. Can we call her a killer, by the way? Are we going to give her the nickname Chrystul Killer Kizer? They did that to Kyle. And when you say, oh, come on, calling him a killer. Well, he did kill. Technically, that's correct. Well, okay. Are we going to call her Chrystul Killer Kizer? And they'll say, you can't do that. She killed her pimp. She killed a man that was raping her. Although that's really not quite true in the sense that he wasn't actively raping her at that time. But whatever the case, they're going to come up with an excuse as to why you can't call her a killer and why you can't convict her just because she killed somebody, although they will use those arguments against Kyle Rittenhouse. Of course, the whole notion of an affirmative defense gets past them. Chrystul Kizer is claiming a certain affirmative defense. And if she turns out to be right, you can't say that she's a murderer. You can't say that she should go to jail. And I think that calling her Killer Kizer is unfair. Are Chrystul supporters going to say she would still be in jail if she was black? She's out on bail. And all we heard throughout the entire months after Kyle got sprung was, if he was black, he would still be in jail. Keep in mind, people came up, scrounged the money, and freed her, just like with Kyle. So are they going to call this white privilege? Well, that's kind of hard since Chrystul is black. We're not going to hear that argument, are we? Are Chrystul supporters going to say those who donated to her cause should be fired? She put out a public appeal for money. People donated to her cause. She's up for murder. Okay, so a person who supports her must be supporting murderers. That's the argument that was used against Kyle Rittenhouse. Keep in mind, Kyle hadn't been convicted of anything at that point. He's just trying to get money together so he can defend himself. And those who gave him money were called supporters of terrorism because he's clearly a murderer. Why? Well, he shot people. Well, she shot Randal Volar. She's facing murder charges. Are the people who are donating to her cause going to be called terrorist supporters? And you know the answer to that. No. And they shouldn't. There's nothing wrong with giving money to somebody's defense if you think that they're innocent. And the people who are giving money to Chrystul Kizer probably think that she is innocent, and that's why they're giving her money. I have no problem with that, and neither should anyone. But they clearly have a problem with that when the recipient is Kyle Rittenhouse. Will Chrystul supporters say that you have to exhaust all alternatives to claim self-defense? Now, she's not claiming self-defense, but they don't know that. They're too stupid, so they think that she is. So are they going to use this argument they used against Kyle, that he didn't exhaust all alternatives? Of course, keep in mind, that's not exactly how the Wisconsin statutes phrase it, but okay, close enough. She could have left the house. He was sitting in his chair. So she could have left. There was an alternative. She didn't exercise it. She shot him. Are they going to use that argument against her? And you know the answer is no. But they have no trouble using it against Kyle Rittenhouse. Are Chrystul supporters going to say that, what if Randal Volar was your son? We heard this all the time. What if Joseph Rosenbaum was your son? What if Anthony Huber was your son? Would you still be thinking that Kyle is not guilty? And the answer to that is probably not, because I would have deep anger towards somebody who shot my son, and therefore I would no longer be an objective observer. It doesn't make me right. And I know what you're thinking. Well, yeah, but Randal Volar's a real scumbag. Joseph Rosenbaum wasn't? So if you ask them, what if Randal Volar was your son? I wonder how they would respond. But they're certainly not going to use that argument themselves, even though they used it against Kyle Rittenhouse supporters. Will Chrystul supporters say that she thought that she was a tough girl? Remember with Kyle, he's walking around like he's a big man. Look at him strutting around. Oh, I hate those kind of types. Well, Chrystul did even worse. While Kyle was walking around with his rifle, may have looked to some people like he was strutting around. That's kind of based on confirmation bias to a certain extent. To me, he's just walking around, but whatever. With Chrystul, she went on Facebook afterwards and pretty much played out the tough girl role. She made it blatant, but that doesn't necessarily mean that she's guilty. It does work against her. And guess what? The prosecution is going to use that argument against her. And guess what? The same people who claim that Kyle is guilty because he was walking around like he was a big man are going to shriek when they use that against Chrystul Kizer. Will Chrystul supporters say that she would have been shot dead by the cops if she was black? How many times have we heard that about Kyle Rittenhouse? He killed 2 people. He shot 3 in total, and he was taken alive. If he was black, they would have shot him dead. Well, guess what? They took her alive. She shot to death a man and then set fire to his house. She's also an arsonist. Also, by the way, she didn't know whether he was alive or dead. So she set fire to the house knowing that he might have still been alive. Okay, whatever the case, they took her alive. Why didn't they shoot her to death? That's what cops do, right? Will Chrystul supporters say that, are we going to hear these arguments from Chrystul supporters? And you know the answer is no. all the arguments they used against Kyle will now be expunged. They're not going to use them because they didn't believe them in the first place. They're frauds, and their treatment of Chrystul Kizer when the case comes up is going to expose them as frauds. Like my video, subscribe to my channel.